Just over the span of 2 games, we went from decent but flawed start to a highly improved sequel. So of course the next logical step is to use that momentum to put out a legendary third game. That was Naughty Dog's idea too, as a few months after Crash 2 was finished, development on the third game started and was created fully in just 10.5 months. Despite the fact they had less time to develop the game and were faced with even more publisher screwery than previously, what came out of this is the favorite Crash game by far. Crash Bandicoot Warped released on October 31st, 1998 to high praise from critics and fans alike. It's often considered the gold standard, the best game in the entire franchise. But do I agree with that notion, or is this an overrated release? Let's dive into it. For one last time, I'll be reviewing the Sane Trilogy version of this game, as it is my preferred version of these first 3 games, but it's okay if you prefer the PS1 originals. If you think this makes the review invalid because I'm reviewing the Sane Trilogy version, then go fight an evil scientist about it. With that said, let's start with the story. After his defeat in Crash Bandicoot 2, Neo Cortex's spaceship falls to pieces and hurtles down to the Earth. One of those pieces lands down on a temple that contains an evil spirit. It turns out that the spirit is another mask named Uka Uka, who's Aku Aku's evil brother for somehow. Cortex has actually been doing his evil deeds for Uka Uka this entire time, and Uka Uka is furious at Cortex's past failures. However, Uka Uka has already hatched another evil plot, and recruits Dr. Nefarious Tropy and the villains to use the time-twisting machine to gather crystals at various points in time. Aku Aku senses that his evil brother is once again free, so he, Crash, and Coco act quickly. They go to the time-twisting machine themselves and travel throughout time to gather the crystals before Cortex, Uka Uka, and our usual rogues gallery can. It's simple, but interesting enough to give the player motivation to complete the game. That's how it should be with Crash, not story-heavy, but the general idea of the plot should be interesting enough for the player to want to see it to the end. And hey, this one doesn't outright spoil itself like Cortex Strikes Back did. Do I really need to say it again? The game looks marvelous in the Sane Trilogy. The animations are once again as smooth as ever, the visual effects are great, and the game is very cartoony and detailed, as always. The PS1 game looks about as good as Crash 2 did. Just like last time, the game is very impressively detailed for the 2.5-decade-old hardware. Warped has, by far, the most varied and unique environments of the entire trilogy. With it being based off many different time periods and parts of the world, that opens the door for a wide variety of locales for players to explore. There's medieval times, the prehistoric age, ancient Middle Eastern areas, the distant future, and more. As a result, Warped is easily the most memorable game of the Sane Trilogy with the most diverse set of locales we've seen thus far. The music applies to that too. The medieval levels have more orchestral sounding songs, the future levels have fully synthesized tracks, so on and so forth. I'd say the soundtrack is about on par with Crash 2's. Pretty good, memorable stuff. The game is pretty well presented as usual. We're now on game number 3 with this gameplay style. How does Warped improve and add to the Crash Bandicoot gameplay formula even further? Once again, the basic gameplay idea we've all become accustomed to has remained intact. Linear action platformer with tons of crates to break, tons of fruit to collect, and tons of crazy bosses to defeat. The same Crash we all know and love, and the improvements made in Crash 2 have stuck. So, what's new? Firstly, bosses now grant you power-ups after you defeat them. The first thing that would come to mind for most people is Mega Man, and it's kind of like that. Although in that game, the powers you obtained were all weapons, whereas in this game it's one weapon and a bunch of more general additions to Crash's moveset. The Super Belly Flop is a souped-up version of your bog standard belly flop. All it really does is increase your shockwave. It's not a whole lot more useful than the regular move. Then there's the Double Jump. It's exactly what you expect it to be. It's a double jump. What else is there to say? The Death Tornado Spin is pretty crazy. By pressing the spin button rapidly, your spin can be noticeably extended, which is cool on its own, but use it in the air and you can practically glide with the thing. This is super fun, I love this. Then there's the Wumpa Fruit Bazooka, the weapon I mentioned half a second ago. You have to stand still while using it, but you can aim it anywhere you want and take out things from a distance. This thing is awesome. And defeating the final boss grants you the Crash Dash. It's a run button. Use this one for post-game time trials. Overall, most of the power-ups are at least somewhat welcome additions, even the more eventful ones like the Double Jump and Crash Dash are appreciated. But the one thing Warped likes to do above all else is constantly change the way you play. This game is arguably the least platformer focused of the entire PS1 trilogy. There's still enough solid platforming for this not to be a flaw, but still it's noticeable how much they relied on these alternate gameplay styles in order to put some variety into the game. Okay, let's cover these in order of first appearance. The underwater levels. Not awful. Crash controls perfectly fine in his scuba gear, and the submarine is pretty rad. This is alright. I'm fine with this. Tiger levels. These are this game's equivalent to the Hog Ride levels and the Polar Bear Ride levels. They're fine, probably my least favorite version of this ride level. If you like these levels, boy howdy do I have something for you for the third game in a row. Jet ski levels. I don't really like these. The control feels wrong, really touchy for lack of a better word. It's just not very fun. Motorbike levels. I don't like these either. The controls are really stiff, it's incredibly easy to lose your boost, it's incredibly easy to lose. You have to finish in first to obtain the level's crystal, these aren't all too fun. You're talking to a huge fan of racing games. When the racing game section in your game irks me, you've done something pretty wrong. These are my least favorite part of the game by far. Flying levels, we're still going with this? Really? Good lord. They are okay. The plane controls feel pretty good, they're mildly entertaining for a bit. Don't really like how both these levels are basically the exact same though. But they're fine, they can stay. Overall, the alternate gameplay styles are a bit of a mixed bag. Some of them are fun, some of them are not. Not everything can be a winner. But I've gotta say, did this one game need 6 different playstyles? Seriously. The game is the exact same length as the previous game, so as a result, the whole game feels a bit less focused on that type platform we've all come to know and love Crash for. And it's kind of a shame. Don't get me wrong, there's plenty of this in work, but adding this much new and different gameplay styles into one game at the same time wasn't that bright of an idea. Some of these stages could have easily been removed and replaced with more of the main gameplay style. Like, for example, the jet ski levels are all pirate themed. Instead of a strangely controlling jet ski, make some pirate-themed main levels instead. That would have been awesome! While there are too many vehicles in this game, the platforming that is still there is marvelous. With all these new moves and mechanics, the game has some of the most solid level design in series history. It's complex, challenging, and fun. This is very well designed platforming and uses the series' best strengths to their maximum. In terms of pure Crash Bandicoot gameplay, it doesn't get much better than this. This is seriously good stuff. Overall, it's not bad at all, with top-notch platforming and great presentation. The overabundance of vehicle levels does lessen the overall experience, but when it's at its best, it's incredible. Overall, Crash Bandicoot Warped is pretty good. Its platforming is some of the best in series history, with cleverly thought-out level design and the perfect amount of challenge. However, it's very dead set on adding a ton of new gameplay styles on top of it that the game feels less focused than its predecessor. And some of them really aren't fun to boot, but still, it's an enjoyable game and a good way to cap off a good introductory trilogy of platformers. That's why I'm giving Crash Bandicoot Warped an 8 out of 10 and a Bronze Award. Not my favorite, but it's still a pretty fun romp regardless, and I'd recommend it to any platforming fanatic. So that was my review of Crash Bandicoot Warped. In my opinion, it's not quite as good as Cortex Strikes Back, but it's a very enjoyable platformer even if not all of it is enjoyable platforming. And that wraps up the Sane Trilogy segment of the Retrospective. While I'm here, I thought I'd give my thoughts on the Sane Trilogy as a whole. Overall, it's a great collection of remakes. The graphics are incredible, and they're very faithful remakes clearly made by people who absolutely adored these original 3 games. There are a few changes from the originals I don't quite like how Polar no longer barks, seriously why'd they remove that? But these are still going to be my preferred versions of the games for all future replays. And hey, thanks to it, not only did an entire new generation experience Crash for the first time ever, this was single-handedly responsible for reviving the series. After grueling years of waiting, rumors, speculation, outcry for Crash's return, seeing this as it was coming out with current-gen versions of our favorite characters made me overjoyed pre-release, because it was so great to see them back. This game holds its own special place in my heart, even if it is just a bunch of remakes. Sorry for getting a tad sappy there for a bit. Next time on the Retrospective, we're tackling our first spin-off as I review Naughty Dog's final Crash game ever, as we take a look at Crash Team Racing for PlayStation. If you enjoyed this video, it'd be great if you can consider leaving a like, commenting with your thoughts, or subscribing for future uploads. Until next time, this has been blueblur98, and I'll see you at the pit stop.